Liverpool was very badly bombed during the Second World War, and in the early days growing up, and when I first started to go to school, only one house in 3 was standing because of the bombing. So if you could imagine, it's about the same size as Pittsburgh. If you can imagine only one building in 3 being there.
Oh wow, so it was like the neighborhood you were going?
Well, that was throughout the city.
Oh.
And so to get to school I had to go through bombed areas and so on just to get to the local school. It's hard to say. I mean, there were lots of people who influenced me when I was growing up. But England was going through a transition from being an empire to being a Commonwealth of Nations, and so there was a lot of debate. I always liked the politics. I enjoyed science. I thought I'd like to be an astronaut. I couldn't be a pirate. All of those different things. But I was influenced by a lot of books that I read. Well, the biggest one in the early days growing up, of course, was the end of the Second World War. I was temporarily a refugee with my mother taking me to Ireland. She was born in Northern Ireland, and she met my father, who'd been injured during the war in Northern Ireland. So we went back there, and then came back to England to live. I think the main event that I remember was the coronation of the current Queen of England, where we all dressed up like soldiers and waved flags and things.
Do you remember any like specific big inventions that were?
Well, again, in part of my career, my later career was in the universities, and so I think the biggest invention was one that was actually here in Pittsburgh, was the polio vaccine. Again, when people of my age growing up, it was quite common for people to have polio, and they had to have irons on their legs so they could walk properly and things like that. And Jonas Salk invented polio vaccine, and that cured that. So we all had to have little sugar lumps with polio vaccine on when we were kids. I think the nuclear weapons, we all had to get under our desks and hide, pretending there was going to be a nuclear war. And of course, but the biggest inventions were the laptop computer, the PC and so on, that we had computers, but they were very big, cumbersome things. And I can do more on my BlackBerry now than I could do with the biggest computer that we had in the university when I was there. Well, I was very fortunate that I was recommended when I was about 8 years old to go to apply for a scholarship to a private school, a private Jesuit school in Liverpool, and most of the people who went to that went on to top universities in England. Unfortunately, my father was taken ill, and I thought I probably wouldn't be able to go to university, but the dean of the college at Liverpool offered me a job so I could do my degree part-time and work in the college. And then subsequently I went to Cambridge University, where I did my graduate work there. But I've worked in different universities. I've worked in 7 different universities around the world, and so I've done academic qualifications in different places. I'm a political scientist by training, but I also held a faculty appointment in the School of Medicine at Cambridge University. I was teaching and administration, I was more of an administrator than a teacher. The best example would be that, like the provost office in the university here, I helped to plan. I left Liverpool University to go to Northern Ireland to plan a new university. Cambridge University offered me an appointment to become the planning officer for the university and plan a new medical school. Then I went to Hong Kong to plan and set up a new university in Hong Kong before I moved to the United States. But I also worked in about 20 other different countries, advising them on their educational system and political matters and so on. We met at a cricket club dance at Liverpool University, and I used to play cricket for the university and for the local county. And my story is that she gate crashed this dance with a friend of hers, and you know, we met there, and then the following day we met again at another event, and so we started dating.
When did you get married?
Got married in 1966. She was 19, I was 21. We got married at a church in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. We're a couple that continually consult one another. Our friends always say that we're always asking one another, is that okay, do you think this? So I think that's something. Of course, she's given me 4 lovely children. I have a son who lives in Australia. His name is Ashley. I have a son who lives in California called Jonathan. And I have twins here, David and Alison, who live here in Pittsburgh.
What's the best thing about being a parent?
Best thing about being a parent?
Or a grandparent?
I think you just... Well, there's a philosophical thing that, you know, it is part of your own immortality by seeing your children. But I think really it's just the joy of helping them develop and grow up. Well, I love to garden. You know, you've seen my garden,
yeah,
and so forth. That's one of them. I like to write. I still like to travel. Cricket, which is a sport that people think is not in the US, but in fact in Pittsburgh there's 15 cricket teams that under the radar. They're never published in any of the newspapers or anything else, even though the editor of the Post-Gazette is the organizer of the whole program. I travelled to Australia to see the big match, the international match, and I'm hoping to go to South Africa later this year to do the same. Well, obviously my family. You know, that's you know, without your family, you don't have anything else to focus on. You know, your whole life revolves around that. And I'm very fortunate to have you know, my wife and 4 children and 6 grandchildren.
Like, what's the hardest thing about growing old?
Well, I think in my case, you know, I lost my parents quite young. Both of them died quite young. My father was in a wheelchair for a good part of my growing up period, having been injured during the war. And my mother died shortly after my father died. So I had to bring up my 2 sisters and brother. But it's all part of the life experience. You just gain from that. It adds value to your life. Well, I think in regard to the future, I always tend to look forward rather than backward. You know, The difference between my wife and myself on this is she always wants to go back to where we lived before and see how things have developed and so on. Where I always tend to look forward and say, well, I'd rather see what's over the horizon than what's behind me. I think I just enjoy doing what I do, and I think life is fun and you've got to make the most of it.
Lastly, your philosophy of life. Like, what's the best advice?
Well, I think as I just said, I think it's looking forward. I think there's not knowing what's in the future, but working and basing your life on the fact that there is going to be a future is important. I just enjoy doing what I do, and I think I've been very fortunate in my life, and most of my decisions have been the right ones. Not all of them, but it gives you inspiration to move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brick.
Okay.